Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This was the first year I'd be spending Christmas alone. I think it sounds sadder than it was, but I couldn't afford the flight back to my hometown and couldn't take off any extra vacation time to make it worth it. Anyway, I always enjoyed seeing others' decorations and driving or walking around on Christmas Day. When I woke up, I turned on the old cartoon Grinch movie and made a nice breakfast and some coffee. Then I spent the next hour on FaceTime with my parents and siblings. After all that, it was probably around noon. I didn't have much else to do, but at some point, I went out to get the mail. When I opened the door, there were footprints in the snow on my porch. What's odd is that they were frozen over, not freshly made in the powdery top layer of snow. They were clearly made hours ago, like overnight when it was well below freezing. I looked around, even though it was obvious they were no longer there, then went out and got my mail. It was very strange. I don't know if I felt scared, but I definitely felt a bit unsettled. I didn't really know what to do about it. Still, I tried to continue my day without worrying too much. After all, it was Christmas. I had some Hallmark movies playing while I opened the gifts and letters my family had sent in the mail. Around 3, I started getting bored and checked the weather. It was supposed to get a lot colder later in the day, so I decided to go for a walk around the neighborhood while I still had the chance. I bundled up and started down the sidewalk, looking at all the Christmas lights and taking in the calmness. A little bit into the walk, I noticed someone else walking in the neighborhood. They were the only other person I saw, and they were walking on the other side of the road. I thought nothing of it. But a few minutes later, they passed by me again. I did a double take, thinking I was seeing things, because there was no way we could have passed each other twice so soon unless they had turned around right after we passed the first time. I kept walking and came up to a split where I could either head back home or keep going around the neighborhood. I ended up going home. It wasn't because of the guy I saw. Sure, it was strange, but something else just felt off and made me want to head back. I went in through the front door, and eerily soon after I got inside, there was a knock at the door. I had only just taken off my boots and was still standing right by the door. My heart pounded in my chest like I knew this was bad. I looked out the peephole and saw a guy standing very close to the door, wearing a baseball cap tilted downward, covering his face. Weirdly, he seemed familiar. I didn't know why at the moment. I thought it was just because he was the man I'd seen walking around the neighborhood. He knocked again. I knew he had to have already seen me enter. "What do you need?" I called out. They didn't answer. A few seconds later, they banged on the door again. I asked again what they were doing here and what they wanted, and watched through the peephole as he just stood there against the door, refusing to answer or speak at all, before banging on the door again. Then he grabbed the door handle and started shoving his whole body into it. I backed away as the whole door shook, rattling on its hinges with each blow. It went on for maybe 20 to 30 seconds. Then it all suddenly stopped. There was a pause, and then multiple people yelling. When I went over and looked again, there were 2 cops outside my home arresting the man at my door. I was completely confused and unsure how this had happened. I thought it was some kind of miracle that they showed up at the perfect time. It turned out a neighbor had called the police and reported a man acting unusual, walking back and forth down our street for hours and standing outside my home. Even more disturbing, though, was that I knew the man. He was an old ex from probably 6 years ago. He didn't even live in the same state anymore, and we hadn't talked at all since the breakup. It's scary to think that so suddenly, years later, he just decided to show up at my house on Christmas Day and try to break in. The cops found 2 knives on him, and in his car that he parked a few blocks away, he had a firearm and a whole roll of duct tape, both of which he had purchased just a few days prior. He admitted to nothing, but it's not hard to see what he was likely intending to do. Christmas nowadays isn't as exciting as it once was. I usually take a trip down to whichever family member is hosting that year and just hang out for the week, then head back home. It's always nice, but with so many people, it often gets a little too chaotic for me. Last year, I rented an Airbnb near my cousin's place. He was the one hosting. He lives kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so most of the options I had to rent were small cabins. I chose one pretty much at random, and a few days before Christmas, I drove out there. The first 2 days were actually really fun. I saw a lot of family I hadn't seen in years and enjoyed catching up. Then even more people showed up, maybe 30 people total, stuffed into a 3-bedroom house. It was a mess. On Christmas Day, we spent the morning watching the kids open their presents, then had a big breakfast. I hung around until dinner, then called it a night around 7 and drove back to the cabin. The place was nestled away in the trees just outside of town. I thought the cabin was fairly nice, though. When I pulled in and parked out front, I noticed shoe prints in the snow leading up to the front door. I figured it had to be the Airbnb host maybe stopping by to check in on me or something. When I got to the front door, it was clear they hadn't gone inside. The tracks just stopped at the door, like they waited a bit and left. I didn't think much of it. I went inside, tossed my jacket on the couch, and sat in the sofa chair. I thought about texting the host to see what he stopped by for, but figured if it was important, he would have messaged me. I ended up forgetting about it. After only a few minutes of sitting down, I dozed off. It must have only been 10 minutes later when I woke up to the sound of the doorbell. I got up and walked over, rubbing the tired look off my face. I opened the door to a man with medium black hair and a brown jacket. He wore a short smile and quickly introduced himself as the host of the Airbnb, shaking my hand. I was still trying to wake up, so I let him do most of the talking while I just stood there and nodded. He asked how my stay had been and then said he just needed to check on a few things inside. Still half asleep, I somehow agreed and let him in. It was only after he walked past me into the house that I realized I had unknowingly allowed him inside. That snapped me awake quickly. He stepped into the living room and just stood there, looking around at the walls. It was like he didn't even know what he was supposed to be checking on. That's when it hit me, it was Christmas Day. Why would he be doing this now? Couldn't he have come yesterday? Or tomorrow? His behavior kept getting weirder. He slowly wandered through the room, moving his head around, clearly pretending to look for something. The thought that he might not actually be the host crept into my mind. I was so caught off guard, and being Christmas, I hadn't expected to deal with anything like this. Hey, do you think you could come back tomorrow instead? I've actually got a bunch of family that should be here any minute now. He stopped what he was doing and turned to face me. His face had gone stiff, and he looked almost angry. Then, instead of heading out the door, he casually walked to it and locked it. That instantly sent a surge of fear through me. I ran straight into the bedroom and locked the door behind me. Within seconds, I heard him run up and try the handle. It started to bend and crack with each hit. My phone and car keys were still out on the couch with my jacket. I knew I had to act fast. I looked around the room and spotted an old hatch-style window. I hurried over as the door cracked louder and began forcing open. I squeezed myself through the window and bolted straight for the tree line. He must have heard me leave, or broke the door down right after, because when I looked back from the woods, I saw him run out the front door. Thankfully, it was dark enough that he didn't know where I went. He stood outside for maybe 20 minutes, just waiting, before finally getting into his car and driving off. I waited a few more minutes, just to be sure, then sprinted back inside, grabbed my phone, and called 911. During the investigation, the actual homeowner and Airbnb host came down and confirmed that the man was not affiliated with the property in any way. There wasn't much evidence to go off of, but police believe the man had discovered the cabin was an Airbnb and used that to gain access. Whatever he was planning, it probably wasn't just to rob the place of its cheap decorations. That night was a close call, and I don't think I'll ever be so trusting again. I had already spent the whole morning and most of the afternoon with family, so now it was just time to go home and wind down for the rest of the night, maybe watch a holiday movie or something. I drove 45 minutes from my parents' home to mine. The roads were empty, as you could imagine. And if not for it being Christmas, it would have actually been kind of eerie. Everything was so quiet and motionless outside. Anyway, I got home around 8, pulled into the garage, and headed inside. I flicked on the entrance light and immediately saw some papers spread across the floor in the hallway. It was all from a stack of mail I had sitting on the counter that I guess had fallen over. I didn't overthink it. I just picked it all back up and tossed it on the counter. I did leave the house in a rush that morning, so maybe I ran past it and caused the pile to fall and just didn't notice. After cleaning it up, I walked around and turned on the rest of the lights, then went into the living room. I had a Christmas tree set up in the corner. It was one of those small, fake ones that looked pretty sad, but it was better than nothing. I sat back on the couch and found a movie to watch, some new Netflix Christmas movie. It was actually pretty good. I watched the whole thing, but throughout the movie, I kept hearing something in my house. It was like quiet, almost inaudible creaks. I wasn't even sure if I was actually hearing it or not, because every time I thought I heard something, I'd pause the movie and listen, but didn't hear anything anymore. I took it as a sign that this Christmas day was over for me, as I needed to get to bed and sleep off the exhaustion of seeing all my family. I turned off the TV and all the lights downstairs and went up to my bedroom, walking in and turning on the overhead lamp without hesitation. I knew something wasn't right. I couldn't pinpoint what it was at first, but I knew my room was not how I'd left it. Something had been moved, and I quickly put all the pieces together from everything I'd been experiencing since getting back home. My body felt numb, both fear and adrenaline taking over me. I walked back out into the hallway and looked down the staircase, trying to listen to see if whoever had been here was still here or not. I quietly went down, step by step, until I reached the bottom. There was no sound or motion at all. Is anyone here? I've called the cops. Hello? It was as I was saying that I realized my stupid mistake. I hadn't called the cops yet. I started to go back upstairs, planning to lock myself in my room and call the police, when sudden footsteps rushed from the living room. It was too dark to see anything more than the Christmas tree branches swaying and a figure rushing away from it. I followed the sound into the kitchen and then the back door. They opened it and ran away. I was just standing there, frozen. Once I snapped out of it, I dialed 911 and locked the back door. I still don't really know what happened that Christmas night. Whoever had broken in hadn't taken much of anything, at least nothing I really noticed. What I think is that they got in just as I was getting home, and once they heard the garage open, they probably sprinted through the kitchen, knocking over the papers, and hid. I know I saw them running away from the tree, but if they were hiding the whole time I was watching the movie, it wouldn't explain the noises I was hearing. Maybe there really weren't any noises, or it was something else entirely. The thought of them being right there in the corner of the room in front of me, waiting and watching me for 2 whole hours, is just horribly disturbing. I wish I had more answers and could tell you more, but that's everything I know. Police weren't of much help, and nothing has happened since. Hopefully, it stays that way. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.